Let's talk about something huge, something we all feel, something we all want: liberty. It's this big foundational idea, right? The bedrock of, well, everything. But it's also super personal. It's that feeling deep down that you're in the driver's seat of your own life. You get to choose, you get to move, you get to just be. It's the basic promise that your life belongs to you and you alone.
Okay, but let's get real for a second. What does it actually mean to be free? Is it just, not being locked in a cage? Or is it something more? Is it being able to just walk out your door, go where you want, see who you want, basically to chase whatever your idea of happiness is? That's what we're talking about, the very heart of being able to determine your own path.
So that's the ideal, but what happens when someone tries to snatch that freedom away from you? That's where the law comes crashing in. You got to think of the law as a shield. For every right we have, there's got to be a legal shield to protect it, and that's what we're digging into today. The law draws this really clear, bright line in the sand. It defines what a crime against liberty is, and it spells out exactly what happens if you're foolish enough to cross that line. It basically screams, this far and absolutely no further.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, we'll define what these crimes even are. Then, we'll get into the different shades of illegal detention. After that, a really important section on minors. Then, we'll tackle the heavy topics of slavery and servitude. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at the basic building blocks of these crimes.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, Defining Crimes Against Liberty. This is all about the legal blueprint for freedom.
So, what are we really talking about here? At its core, a crime against liberty is pretty much what it says on the tin. Someone unlawfully takes away another person's freedom. But, and this is super important, it's not just one thing. It's 2 key pieces of the puzzle: your freedom of movement and your freedom of self-determination. So, we're not just talking about the classic locking someone in a basement scenario. It's much deeper. It's about someone violating your basic right to make your own choices, to be your own person. It's about one person's will crushing another's.
So how do lawyers and judges even figure this stuff out? Well, they have this secret formula. Let's call it the legal equation. It's super powerful, and it has 3 main ingredients. First up, you have the prohibited act. That's the actus reus in legal speak. It's simply what the person did, the physical action. Second ingredient, the guilty mind, or mens rea. This is the why. What was going on in their head? What was their intention? And finally, the third ingredient, the key circumstances. This is all about the context, the surrounding facts that can totally flip the script on what the crime is. So act plus intent plus circumstances equals the crime. Got it? This little equation is our toolkit for this entire explainer. We're going to use it again and again.
All right, toolkit in hand, let's put it to work. Section 2 is all about illegal detention. And here's the thing. The law doesn't just see this as one black and white crime. Nope, it's more like a spectrum. A sliding scale from slight to, well, extremely serious. And on that spectrum, we're going to look at 3 main levels or tiers. At the very top, the most serious, you've got Article 267, kidnapping and serious illegal detention. In the middle, there's Article 268, which is for slight illegal detention. And then at the lower end of the scale, we have Article 269, unlawful arrest. And you're going to see exactly how our little legal equation is what separates them and explains why the law treats them so differently.
Okay, let's jump in at the deep end. We're starting at the top of the pyramid, serious illegal detention. I mean, the name alone tells you everything you need to know, right? The law is not messing around with this one.
So let's break it down with our formula. What's the act, the actus reus? It's pretty straightforward: kidnapping someone, detaining them, taking away their liberty. Simple. But here's the first critical piece of the puzzle. Who's doing it? This law is aimed squarely at private individuals. This isn't about a cop overstepping their bounds. That's a whole other category. This is about one regular citizen illegally taking away the freedom of another. And now for the third part of our equation, the circumstances. And this is where things get really interesting. Think of these as the severity dial or an escalation ladder. The base crime is just detaining someone. But if any of these circumstances are present, you crank that dial all the way up to serious. So, was the person held for more than 3 days? Boom, you've climbed a rung on the ladder. Did the bad guy pretend to be a cop? You just went up another rung. Did they hurt the person, threaten to kill them, or was the victim a child? Each one is another step up. And what's at the very top of that ladder? The classic movie trope, demanding a ransom. Any one of these things takes a bad situation and legally makes it one of the worst crimes possible.
So what happens when you hit the top of that ladder? The consequences are massive. We're talking up to 40 years in prison. 40 years! That's reclusio perpetua. It's basically the heaviest penalty the law has. A huge, flashing neon sign from society saying, we absolutely will not tolerate this.
Okay, so let's dial it back a notch and look at the next level down. Slight illegal detention. Now pay attention here because the act is the same. A private person takes away someone's liberty. The person doing it is the same. A private individual. So what's the difference? It's all about what's missing. The only thing that separates slight from serious is that none of those escalation ladder factors are present.
You can really see the logic here, right? The law basically puts a big red circle around the most heinous versions of this crime, the ones with ransom, with violence, with kids involved, and calls them serious. Anything that doesn't hit that high bar, any other case of a private citizen illegally detaining someone, falls into this other bucket. Article 268 becomes the default setting for illegal detention. The physical act is identical, but it's the circumstances that change the entire game.
And here's another really smart thing the law does. It's not just about throwing the book at people, it's also about giving them an out. For slight illegal detention, there's this kind of off-ramp. If the kidnapper has a change of heart and voluntarily lets the person go within 3 days, and, crucially, if they haven't achieved whatever their goal was, the penalty gets knocked way down. It's a super pragmatic move, right? The law is basically incentivizing the offender to do the right thing and end the crime, putting the victim's safe return above everything.
And that brings us to the third and final tier on our spectrum, unlawful arrest. Now this one is different because the key changes in the intent, the mens rea. Think about it. In the other two, the goal is just to detain someone illegally. Here, the offender's goal is actually to hand the person over to the cops. It's the classic citizen's arrest that goes horribly wrong. The person thinks they're being a hero, they think they're doing the right thing, but they just don't have the legal justification for it. The intent is totally different, and so the law sees it as a completely different crime.
Okay, so let's pull all that together and look at it side by side. You've got serious illegal detention, right? That's all about the presence of those big, bad, aggravating factors like ransom or injury. It's committed by a private individual and the severity is high. We're talking max penalty. Then you have slight illegal detention. Same offender, but the key is the absence of those factors. It's still serious, but we're in the medium tier. And finally, unlawful arrest. This one is all about the intent. The goal is to get the person to the authorities, but without a legal leg to stand on. The offender can be anyone, and the severity is much lower. See? It all comes back to our equation: act, intent, and circumstances.
That framework is going to be super helpful as we move into our next section. Section 3, the world of minors. When kids are involved, the law gets even more specific, and it zeroes in on two things: vulnerability and the absolute betrayal of trust.
So check this out. The first crime we're looking at here, Article 270, is all about that betrayal of trust. The bad guy here isn't some stranger lurking in the shadows. No, it's someone who is supposed to be a protector, someone the parents trusted with their child, maybe a teacher, a babysitter, even another family member. And the criminal act, the actus reus, is when that trusted person just deliberately doesn't bring the child back when they're supposed to.
And the penalty for that? Get this, up to 40 years. Reclusion perpetua. That is exactly the same punishment as someone who kidnaps a person for ransom and threatens to kill them. It's a powerful statement, isn't it? The law is saying that betraying that kind of sacred trust is just as evil, just as damaging as the most violent kidnapping. Now, let's flip the coin and look at Article 271. This is a totally different scenario. Here, the offender isn't someone who is given custody. It could be literally anyone. And the act isn't about failing to return a kid. It's about the persuasion, the manipulation. It's the crime of convincing a minor to pack a bag and run away from home in the first place.
So you see the difference, right? Article 270 is what we could call an insider crime. It's a betrayal from within the circle of trust. Article 271 is an outsider crime. It's a malicious influence coming from someone outside that circle. For the law, these are two totally different kinds of harm, two distinct ways of attacking a child's safety and the stability of their family.
And the penalties really drive this difference home. Look at this. For betraying trust, that failure to return a minor, it's that staggering 40 years. But for influencing a minor to leave, it's a max of 6 years. Still serious, but nowhere near the same level. And then there's a fascinating twist. If the person doing the persuading is one of the child's parents, the penalty drops way down to just 6 months. That's the law recognizing that family situations are, well, they're complicated, and the intent might be very different.
Okay, we've talked about violating someone's liberty.
Now we have to move on to the most extreme end of the spectrum, the attempt to erase it entirely. Section 4, Slavery and Servitude. This is where a human being stops being treated as a person and starts being treated as a thing, as property.
The law in Article 272 is very specific about what slavery is. The act can be purchasing, selling, kidnapping, or detaining a person, but again, it all comes down to the intent, the mens rea. For it to be the crime of slavery, the purpose behind those actions has to be enslavement itself. The goal is to own another human, to completely obliterate their free will. And the penalty reflects that. The baseline punishment is up to 12 years in prison, making it crystal clear that owning another person is absolutely forbidden. And if the purpose of the slavery is tied to something like forced prostitution or other immoral acts, that penalty immediately jumps to the maximum.
Next is a particularly disgusting form of exploitation covered in Article 273. Here's how it works. A parent or guardian racks up a debt. Then, the creditor uses that debt as a weapon. They force the minor, the child, to work it off against their will. It's a twisted form of bondage where the chains aren't metal, they're made of a debt that the child had nothing to do with.
For that kind of exploitation, the penalty is up to around 4 years. It's the law specifically targeting and punishing someone for weaponizing a family's financial trouble to basically steal a childhood.
And finally, there's Article 274, which deals with something similar for adults. It's called debt bondage or peonage. This is where someone owes money, but instead of going through the courts or legal channels, the creditor forces them to work to pay it off. The key word there is compels. This isn't a voluntary work arrangement. It's forced labor, pure and simple. And that'll get you up to about 2 years in prison. The principle here is rock solid and incredibly important. It doesn't matter how real the debt is. You can never, ever use it as an excuse to force someone to work for you. A person's freedom can never be used as collateral. All right, we have been deep in the weeds with a lot of specific articles and laws. So for our last section, I want to zoom all the way back out. Let's look again at that big picture framework that ties all of this together. Think of it as your own personal legal analysis toolkit.
And here it is one last time, our legal equation. The act, the intent, and the circumstances. And I really want you to get that this isn't just some dusty old legal theory. It's a practical, real-world tool. You just ask 3 simple questions. 1, what did the person do? That's the act. 2, what were they thinking? That's the intent. And 3, what else was going on? Those are the circumstances.
When you look at it this way, you start to see that criminal law isn't just a giant random list of don'ts. It's a surprisingly logical system. Think about it. What separated serious from slight detention? The circumstances. What separated kidnapping from a botched citizen's arrest? The intent. Every single crime we've talked about is just a unique recipe made from the same 3 basic ingredients: act, intent, and circumstances.
And that's a wrap. You now have this powerful little toolkit that lets you see exactly how the law thinks about and protects our most fundamental right, our freedom. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have this framework, this way of thinking, act, intent, circumstances, how does that change things for you? How does it change the way you listen to the news or think about a situation you see playing out in the world?